Welcome back to the Think and Speak podcast. Today's episode is about something every English learner secretly thinks about, but rarely talks about: confidence. Not vocabulary lists, not grammar books. Confidence.
Exactly, Emma. You can know 1,000 words and still freeze when someone asks you a simple question like, "So, what do you do?" That silence isn't about English ability. It's about psychology.
And that's what makes today exciting. We're diving into why speaking English feels scary, how your brain reacts in real conversations, and what you can do to sound confident even when your English isn't perfect.
This lesson is modern, practical, and designed for real-life English. No textbook conversations. No unrealistic dialogues. Just how confident speakers actually think and speak.
If you've ever said, "I understand English but I can't speak," this episode is for you. And before we go deeper,
make sure you like this video, leave a comment telling us what makes you nervous about speaking English, and subscribe to Think and Speak podcast. Your engagement helps us create better lessons for you.
let's begin. Daniel, many learners say they feel confident thinking in English, but the moment they have to speak, everything disappears. Words vanish, grammar feels confusing, and they suddenly worry about mistakes. Why does this happen psychologically, even when someone knows the language well? What's going on in the brain at that moment? And why does speaking feel so different from reading or listening?
This is one of the most important questions in language learning, Emma. Psychologically, speaking English activates a very different process than reading or listening. When you read or listen, your brain is in recognition mode. You recognize vocabulary, grammar structures, and meaning. But when you speak, your brain switches to production mode, which is far more demanding. In production mode, your brain must do several things at once: choose vocabulary, apply grammar rules, organize sentence structure, control pronunciation, and monitor how you sound. This creates what psychologists call cognitive load. When the load is too high, anxiety appears, and anxiety blocks access to memory. That's why learners say, "I know this word, but I can't remember it now." Another key factor is the affective filter, a term from linguistics. The affective filter rises when learners feel fear, embarrassment, or pressure. For example, when someone thinks, "What if I make a grammar mistake?" or "What if they judge my accent?" the brain prioritizes emotional safety instead of language performance. Let's look at a simple example. A learner knows the present perfect. "I have worked here for 5 years. But in conversation, they panic and say, "I work here 5 years. Grammatically imperfect, but communicatively successful. The problem is not grammar knowledge, it's fear of imperfection. Confident speakers understand something crucial: communication is more important than correctness. Native speakers regularly use incomplete sentences, fillers, and pauses. Phrases like, "you know," "I mean," and "let me think" reduce pressure and give the brain time to process. From a psychological perspective, confidence grows when learners shift from accuracy-focused thinking to message-focused thinking. Instead of asking, "Is this sentence correct?" they ask, "Is my meaning clear?" Practically, learners should practice low-risk speaking. This means speaking without correction, timing, or judgment. Shadowing exercises, speaking to yourself, or answering questions aloud builds automaticity. Grammar becomes subconscious over time. Confidence is not the absence of mistakes. It's the ability to continue speaking despite them. Once learners accept that mistakes are part of fluent speech, the brain relaxes, the affective filter lowers, and English flows more naturally.
Many English learners believe confidence comes after fluency. They say, "When my grammar is perfect, then I'll speak confidently." Is this belief correct? Or does confidence actually come before fluency? How does mindset influence the way learners speak? And what mental habits separate confident English speakers from hesitant ones?
This belief is one of the biggest myths in language learning. Confidence does not come after fluency. In reality, fluency grows because of confidence. Psychologically, confidence is a permission you give yourself to speak imperfectly. Confident speakers operate with a growth mindset. They see mistakes as data, not failure. Hesitant speakers often have a fixed mindset, believing their English level defines their identity. When someone thinks, "My English is bad," every mistake feels personal. Let's look at grammar. A hesitant speaker might avoid complex structures like conditionals because they fear errors. For example, instead of saying, "If I had more time, I would practice English every day," they stay silent. A confident speaker tries the sentence, even if it comes out imperfectly. Confident speakers also use communication strategies. They paraphrase when they forget a word. If they forget negotiate, they say, talk to find an agreement. This skill is more valuable than perfect vocabulary. Another habit is tolerance of ambiguity. English conversations are messy. You don't always understand everything. Confident speakers accept partial understanding and continue anyway. They ask clarification questions like, "Could you explain that again?" or "Do you mean?" Psychologically, confident speakers focus outward, not inward. Hesitant speakers constantly monitor themselves, pronunciation, grammar, accent. Confident speakers focus on the listener and the message. This shift reduces anxiety and increases fluency. Here's a powerful technique: delayed correction. Instead of correcting yourself mid-sentence, finish your idea first. For example, "I've been living here since 2020. You correct calmly and continue. This keeps communication flowing. Confidence also grows through repetition. Fluency is not talent, it's automation. The more you repeat phrases like, "in my opinion," "from my experience," or "that's a good question," the less effort your brain uses. In short, confidence is a skill, not a personality trait. When learners allow themselves to speak before they feel ready, fluency follows naturally. Waiting for perfection is the fastest way to stay silent.
Let's talk about practical change. If an English learner wants to sound confident starting today, not months later, what specific psychological and language strategies should they use? How can they train confidence in daily conversations, meetings, or social situations using modern, realistic methods?
Confidence can absolutely be trained, and it starts with small, intentional habits. The first strategy is scripted spontaneity. Learners should prepare flexible sentence starters like, "Honestly, I think." That's an interesting point because "I'm not an expert, but." These phrases reduce cognitive load and create fluency anchors. Second, learners should practice chunking, a key concept in linguistics. Instead of translating word by word, memorize chunks. For example, make a decision, take responsibility, or on the other hand. Chunks sound natural and increase confidence instantly. Third, control pace, not perfection. Speaking slightly slower improves pronunciation, grammar accuracy, and confidence. Pauses are powerful. Silence is not weakness, it's control. Psychologically, learners must reframe mistakes. Instead of thinking, "I made an error," think, "I successfully communicated." This rewiring reduces anxiety over time. Another modern strategy is confidence mirroring. Observe how confident speakers speak, intonation, pauses, filler words. Notice how they say, "well," or "so," at the beginning of sentences. These discourse markers make speech sound natural and relaxed. Grammar-wise, learners should prioritize high-impact structures, present perfect for experience, conditionals for opinions, and modal verbs like might, could, and should for softening speech. These forms increase sophistication without complexity. Daily micro-practice is essential. Answer one question aloud every day. Describe your day using past simple and present perfect. Practice opinions using linking words like because, however, and therefore. Finally, confidence grows when learners accept their accent. Accent is identity, not error. Clear communication matters more than sounding native. Confidence is not a destination. It's a daily practice. Speak first, refine later. That mindset changes everything.
Daniel, some learners feel confident when practicing English alone but completely freeze in social situations. Why does confidence drop in real conversations? And what psychological tricks help people maintain composure when speaking in front of others?
This is a very common issue, Emma. The difference between private practice and public speaking often comes down to social pressure and self-monitoring. When learners speak alone, the brain's cognitive load is lower. They can think freely, recall vocabulary, and experiment with grammar without fear. However, in social situations, two things happen psychologically. Heightened self-consciousness. The learner's brain triggers the fight-or-flight response. It interprets potential judgment as a threat. This can cause freezing, stuttering, or mental blanking. Increased monitoring. The learner shifts focus inward, thinking, "Am I saying this correctly? Do they understand me?" Instead of focusing on the conversation, they focus on themselves, which paradoxically reduces performance. To maintain composure, learners can use modern psychological strategies. The first is visualization. Before a conversation, imagine it going well. Picture yourself responding confidently, using correct phrases, and handling pauses calmly. This prepares the brain for positive outcomes. The second is chunked rehearsal. Practice using ready-made sentence structures like, "In my opinion, I agree with you because..." "That's interesting, I think." When these chunks become automatic, the brain can focus on conversation meaning instead of grammar construction. The third technique is controlled breathing. Slow, deep breaths lower stress hormones and reduce the affective filter. Combine this with small pauses in conversation to collect thoughts. It looks natural and gives mental space to produce correct English. Finally, social mini-goals help. Instead of aiming for perfect grammar, set goals like, "I will ask one question," or "I will share one opinion today." Achieving small, realistic targets builds confidence gradually. In short, social confidence is a skill you train. By reducing cognitive load, using practiced language chunks, managing stress, and focusing on communication rather than perfection, learners can speak fluently in real-world situations.
Many learners worry about their accent or pronunciation. How much does an accent affect confidence? And what practical strategies can help learners speak clearly while still sounding natural?
Accent anxiety is one of the most underestimated factors in English confidence. Psychologically, learners often tie their self-worth to sounding native, but the reality is that clarity, not accent, drives effective communication. Studies show that most listeners understand English speakers with strong accents as long as pronunciation is intelligible. The problem is often internal. Learners hear their own mistakes and amplify them in their mind, increasing the affective filter and lowering confidence. Practical strategies start with phonetic awareness. Focus on the sounds that cause the most misunderstandings. For example, thin, think, vin, very, in, right. Use minimal pairs like ship versus sheep to practice distinction. Don't try to eliminate the accent entirely. Aim for intelligibility. Second, use stress and intonation patterns. English relies heavily on rhythm. Correct stress placement can make speech clearer even if the accent remains. For instance, "I love chocolate" versus "I love chocolate." Notice the emphasis shift conveys meaning. Third, shadowing exercises work wonders. Listen to a native speaker sentence, then repeat immediately, imitating rhythm, intonation, and speed. This improves both pronunciation and confidence because learners realize they can sound clear and natural. Fourth, learners should accept their accent as part of their identity. Confidence skyrockets when you shift focus from sounding native to being understood. Using phrases like, "I might sound different, but here's my point," can even preempt anxiety in conversation. Finally, integrate pronunciation into daily communication. Instead of isolated drills, practice phrases used in real conversations. For example, "Could you explain that again? I see your point, but I think..." Over time, clear communication becomes automatic, and confidence replaces fear. Remember, fluency, clarity, and confidence matter more than perfect accent. Accent is a style, not a limitation.
Daniel, sometimes learners know the grammar and vocabulary but still speak very slowly, pausing after almost every word. What causes this hesitation? And how can learners train themselves to speak more fluently without thinking too much?
This hesitation is very common, Emma, and it's usually caused by overthinking. When learners try to construct perfect sentences in real time, their brain experiences cognitive overload. It's trying to select the right word, check grammar, recall pronunciation, and simultaneously think about the conversation flow. The result? Slow, halting speech. The key to fluency is automaticity. You want your brain to retrieve chunks of language automatically, without conscious thought. For example, instead of thinking word by word for a simple sentence like, I went to the store yesterday and bought some apples, the learner practices the chunk, I went to the store yesterday. This reduces pauses and builds fluid speech. Another modern technique is shadowing, where learners listen to a native speaker and repeat immediately, matching rhythm, intonation, and speed. Over time, speech becomes automatic because the brain builds a mental pattern for sentences. Filler phrases also help. Phrases like, let me think, you know, or well, give the brain a fraction of a second to organize thoughts while keeping conversation natural. Finally, practice with timed speaking exercises. Set a timer for 1 minute and describe your day or opinion without stopping. At first, errors are okay. Over time, the brain adjusts to continuous speech, reducing hesitation. Fluency is a habit, not perfection.
Daniel, many learners feel nervous about asking questions in English, even if they understand everything. How can someone build confidence in speaking up during conversations or meetings? And are there strategies to make questions sound natural?
This is a crucial point, Emma. Learners often hesitate to ask questions because of fear of judgment or sounding stupid. Psychologically, the fear of negative evaluation increases the affective filter, blocking language retrieval and making even simple questions feel impossible. The first strategy is preparing question templates. Instead of inventing questions on the spot, memorize flexible structures. Could you explain? What do you mean by? I'm curious about. These phrases are modern, polite, and widely used in professional and casual contexts. Second, use intonation and stress to sound natural. English questions often rise at the end. Could you explain this part again? Slight upward pitch on again. I'm curious about your approach. Stress on curious and approach. Third, build mini-goals for participation. Start by asking one question per meeting or conversation. Small successes build confidence and reduce anxiety over time. Fourth, practice in low-pressure environments. Speak with friends, tutors, or even record yourself asking questions. Repetition trains your brain to associate question asking with competence, not fear. Finally, reframe mistakes. Even if pronunciation or grammar isn't perfect, asking a question is valuable because it keeps you engaged in conversation. Listeners rarely notice minor errors. They value your participation. By combining prepared templates, natural intonation, practice, and a focus on communication rather than perfection, learners can confidently speak up in any setting. Confidence grows when speaking becomes a habit instead of a high-stakes performance.